I was 15 weeks into a 10-week internship when I got busted.
The guy who just said that talked me into starting this podcast. It took him years. I kept saying no. Today he's in the chair, Jeff Crilley, Detroit kid, grew up with hand-me-down clothes, 25 years in TV news. He walked away from all of it with his fingers shaking over the I quit button when he was about to send the email. This is the story of a man who refuses to hear no, and he's building a PR and podcasting empire. This is episode 14 of The Grit Mindset Revisited. Listen in and stay gritty. This is Matt Rosen, and this is The Grit Mindset with me, your host, Matt Rosen. The mission of The Grit Mindset is to inspire and empower listeners by delving deep into the journeys of those who have faced significant challenges and emerged stronger. Through authentic conversations, we uncover the mindsets, strategies, and lessons that have propelled these individuals to overcome adversity and achieve success. My aim is to provide actionable insights and real-world advice to help our listeners cultivate their own grit and navigate their personal and professional lives with confidence and resilience.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of The Grit Mindset with Matt Rosen. I'm your host, Matt Rosen. I've got a really special episode lined up today. The inspiration behind this show, Mr. Jeff Crilley, we're actually in his studio, is on today. He helped me come up with this great idea in this podcast. So, Jeff, welcome to the show.
I'm thrilled, and I got to tell you, I'm a little uncomfortable because I'm usually sitting in your seat asking the questions.
I know.
So it's always weird to be the guest.
So, yeah, how many times do you get to be a guest in your own studio?
Maybe like once a year.
Yeah.
So, but it never gets easier for me.
I can't get old either. You got a great story to share.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thanks for being on. It means a lot. Thanks for talking me into doing this. But let's talk about grit. What you planted the grit seed in my head, and it started there. So help me understand what you were thinking when you're like, hey, this guy should do a show and it should be about grit.
So I'm the tail end of the baby boomers. So I'm 61. I think the last baby boomer is 64, and I was born in 63. And I think anybody over the age of 50, you're born with grit. Unless you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth, you know, nobody, was going to pay that light bill but you. And so there's a hustle that goes along with all entrepreneurs. And I'm an EO. I know you're a proud member of YPO.
Yeah.
And nobody could get to the top of their industry without grit. It's the stick-to-itiveness. It's the time when you're laying awake at night and saying, can I pay payroll? If you don't experience that, you're not a true entrepreneur. We've all had those.
I agree.
I have a saying that I say to myself that fear is crippling. If you stay in fear very long, you don't want to get out of bed in the morning. But you can turn fear into fight. And so anytime I start to feel fear, it's just such a horrible emotion, I say, turn fear into fight. And then that gets me like Rocky, he got knocked down, but he's going to get out.
Turn on Eye of the Tiger.
Turn on Eye of the Tiger. And that is actually one of my favorite songs and the Rocky theme song. But yeah, I think I've had grit my whole life. I was a poor kid in Detroit growing up. Had hand-me-down clothes, couldn't afford my own clothes until I was in high school.
Wow.
And so I think I was born with grit. Then you go to work for corporate America. So I spent 25 years in TV news. They don't really, I guess I had grit as a reporter. You have to. I mean, you get some doors slammed in your face. And so
Have to do some tough stories, things you don't want to do.
Yeah, so certainly I had grit during my TV news days, but then I wrote a book in 2002, and the book was called Free Publicity, A TV Reporter Shares Secrets for Getting Covered on the News. It was a tell-all PR book written by a journalist saying, no, hey, if you guys want to be the lead story on the 10 o'clock news, here's what you say to me. Here's what you should never say to me. Here's how you talk in sound bites. Talk about grit. My TV station, Fox 4 here in Dallas, said, Jeff, how are you planning to promote your book? I said, I figured I'd give some speeches. They said, all right, but be careful. You're a working reporter, so we cannot have your integrity compromised. You have to speak for free. And so, true story, Matt, they unleashed an entrepreneur on the world. You're looking at a crazy man who gave 300 speeches a year for 6 straight years in addition to his TV job. Breakfast speech, lunch speech, go to work at Channel 4. Breakfast speech, lunch speech, go to work at Channel 4. I end up selling 70,000 copies of this PR book while still a reporter, and people kept trying to hire me. Because when you're on stage, I mean, one of the things that I would say on stage is, okay, raise your hand if you've ever sent out a press release before. Everybody raises their hand. And I say, stop doing that. Nobody's reading your press releases. There's too many to read. And so I would have people coming up to me after the speech saying, Jeff, listen, it's clear to me that I hired the wrong PR firm. I've been paying them for several months. I've yet to be on the news. I want to fire them today and hire you. And I'd say, nope, don't do that. I'm not for sale. I can't take your money. And then I remember an attorney taking his card out of his wallet and putting a dollar sign on it, handing it to me saying, you'd be a fool to throw this away, Jeff Crilley, because if I ever get a chance to hire the guy who literally wrote the book on free publicity, you're hired.
So you gave 300 speeches a year for free while you were holding down a full-time job just to get the word of the book out.
Yes. And so I was making $135,000 a year at Channel 4. I was making $100 on the side selling a book. So my side hustle was equaling my main hustle. And then I came to that, I think that crisis that we all come to. I was 45. I'm now 61. And I said, I'm not getting any younger. If I have a second act in me, I got to do it now. So the scariest thing I ever did, Matt, was walk away from TV news. It was the only thing I knew since I was 19 years old in college.
Yeah.
And so I remember my finger hovering over the I quit button, and I sent it. And then I felt exhilaration and horror all at the same time.
So you quit your full-time gig, but you had a plan of what was going to come next.
I did. I had squirreled away 30 cards with dollar signs. Most of them I put the dollar sign on myself. And I knew if I was going to start a PR firm, these would be my first clients. So I called up each one of them. I said, hey, you won't remember me. My name is Jeff Crilley. Oh, my God, I watch you every night, Jeff. I've got your book. I said, well, I made a note on your business card a few years ago to call you if I ever put in my notice. And I'm for hire. So I started this company in my home in 2008 with 10 clients paying me $3,000 a month. So you can do the math. That's not too shabby.
Yeah.
No overhead. Second year, 20 clients paying me $3,000 a month. This is real money now.
Yeah.
$750,000 with no overhead. Then towards the end of year 2, we hired our first employee, and then it's grown into a decent sized PR firm. We've got 20 full-time employees, something like 290 clients on retainer. And, one of the most exciting parts is the division that you're in right now. Podcasting has become super cool. I've been preaching for the last 7 years. Everybody needs a podcast. Everybody needs a podcast. When we first met,
You've been trying to get me to do a podcast for years.
I have. And then Joe Rogan, a lot of conservatives believe that Joe Rogan got Trump elected. That in the final weeks of the election, Barron Trump, his son, says, Dad, forget 60 Minutes. They're only viewed by 13 million people on a good Sunday night. Joe Rogan, if he featured you, guaranteed 100 million people. And so Trump flies to Austin, does a 3-hour interview with Joe Rogan. I mean, your shows are 30 minutes, mine are 15 minutes. I can't imagine a 3-hour show.
3 hours is a long time, and it's a lot to listen to, but it's entertaining for just 3 hours.
And so then Trump does that, and then the next week, J.D. Vance does 2 hours with Joe Rogan, and Trump wins all the swing states. And so a lot of conservatives say, man, had he not done that podcast, he might have split some of the swing states. So I think the power of podcasting to me is just evident.
Yeah. So let's talk about getting this real news PR started.
Sure.
Talk about the scariest times and the times where you really had to dig deep into that grit you developed back in Detroit to kind of make this studio the success it is today. Because I'm sure it wasn't all sunshine and roses throughout.
Well, I remember in the first year, perfect plans are you're sending out this many bills and you're collecting on time. And I remember a client had just really slow paid, and he was like 3 or 4 months behind. And at that point, it added up to a significant amount of money.
Any amount in the early days is tough.
Right. And so I remember having lunch with the guy to get the check. And Matt, I was so stressed out about getting that check that I really felt like I want to choke you if you don't give me this check. And I think about that now, because even in the early days, we didn't even have a line of credit. I was not a great entrepreneur. I set up my company without a single line of credit, so everything was just cash flowing.
Hey, being debt free is a good thing.
Debt free is a good thing. But yeah, now 16 years later, I remember, wow, you were ready to choke a guy because he was 3 months behind on his bill. That you were actually more stressed out than you like to think.
Yeah.
When I tell people, how successful we were from day one, it didn't come without,
Yeah.
some bumps.
So what happened?
He ended up giving me the check.
You didn't have to choke him. No choking at lunchtime.
Cops were not called.
You didn't end up on the news.
Didn't end up on the news. That would be. We were in a corner bakery, so it would have been awkward.
Oh, I've got some stories about a corner bakery not up here. The worst business meetings I've ever had all happened at a corner bakery. Won't eat there. One of my good friends own it. He's like, seriously? But so you overcame the situation. Were there some others? Obviously first client not paying one. Anything else you ran into along the way?
I remember, I think I had a little bit of imposter syndrome, which I think we all do, because there's these really big PR firms in Dallas. We're hundreds of employees, and so I felt like the little guy on the block. And so I remember our first big client was Cinemark. And that was a huge thing for me. This was, before COVID, and went into the Cinemark building at Parker and the Tollway, went into a meeting. I brought like a couple of team members with me so that I could appear like I had a big company. And I was kind of getting grilled by, 4 or 5 of their chief people. And then I remember walking out with a handshake and feeling like, wow. This scrappy little kid from Motown, Detroit just landed the Cinemark account. And we've had other big accounts. Comerica is a client of ours. And so we actually specialize in small to mid-sized businesses. There's some headaches that go along with working for a Fortune 500 country.
Totally get. I got a few of those myself.
Right. So yes, you get a larger payday, but there's a lot of stress related to it.
Yeah.
And I think we all want to make more money and have less stress. So I just specialize in experts. I love doctors, lawyers, mental health experts. You're an AI expert. So we've built a factory of experts. Yeah. So the media will contact us, 4 or 5 times a day saying, hey, I need an expert in AI. I need an expert in the Middle East because of what Trump just did. Right. And then whether it benefits us or not, Matt, we just go out and we find the best expert we can find and we give them to the media. And what we've done is we've pretty much trained the media contact us. So I have a daily email that you know about.
Yeah, the rundown.
The rundown. It's a labor of love, folks. 16 years, every single morning at 4, I get up.
That's amazing.
I got
even on vacation.
Even on vacation, yes. Memorial Day. I'm going to be getting up. But anyway, I've built a loyalty on this list, and it's a tip sheet. It's basically, hey guys, if you wanted to do a story about the big beautiful bill that the House just passed. Here's a political strategist who can talk about it. So we're just serving it up on a silver platter to the journalists, complete with the client's name and email and photo. And so the media knows they don't have to go through a PR firm to get to the client. And there's been a couple times over the past 5 years where we worked together, and then I would text you at 7 in the morning and say, oh, by the way, you might be on the news today.
Yeah, I've done a lot of AI talks on Fox News and CBS and other things. So what have you learned across all these, experts? Any really solid stories of great you've seen across your client base?
I think all of my successful clients have had those sleepless nights.
Yeah.
And EO and YPO, they always teach you to go to the 5%.
Yeah.
The 5% that you don't tell anybody, the 5% you wouldn't tell your wife. And every successful entrepreneur I've ever met has had grit. In fact, I would encourage young people watching this show, if you haven't had adversity and adversity comes your way, instead of dreading it, say thank you. Because it's an opportunity. And the analogy I use sometimes is, I'm sure when Brady or Marino were playing, street football as a little
Great
kid.
Quarterbacks.
Yes. When they were playing street football as a little kid, they were saying, okay, we're down by 6 points, 30 seconds left in the game, and we're going to win this game. They don't play the game. Okay, we're up by 45 points. So think about the grit that it takes to be an elite athlete. You have to overcome obstacles. Simone Biles, the last Olympics, 4+ years ago, had the yips.
Yeah.
She couldn't compete. So we all have that inner voice. Can I do this? And sometimes you have to talk to that monster in your head that is creating the worst case scenario. I mean, if you look at Simone Biles, I mean, she's flipping at 100 miles an hour, and that's a dangerous sport.
Pretty wild, yeah.
And you can't really have the yips. But somehow, and I'd be anxious to learn how she overcame it, but something changed where she said, you know what? I got this. So again, all young entrepreneurs, don't fear adversity, celebrate adversity. It makes you tougher.
Yeah, you talked about kind of your upbringing in Detroit and being born with grit. Just talk a little bit more about that and how that got infused in you. And then let's talk about why maybe some of that's not there today.
Yeah. So one of my favorite stories of grits, and I tell this at college campuses, is I got an internship my sophomore year of college, and it was a 10-week internship, and I realized, gosh, if the internship is over and I don't have a job, I have to leave. But if I don't tell them the internship is over, I get to stay. So Matt, true story. I was 15 weeks into a 10-week internship when I got busted. The news director is walking down the hallway with a cup of coffee.
You just conveniently didn't wrap up the internship.
I didn't.
You just kept showing up.
I just kept showing up. And so I'm 15 weeks into a 10-week internship when I get busted. The news director, who's an old curmudgeon, he was, just grumbling under his voice, said, "Crilley, this is a long internship. When is this thing over?" And I said it was over 5 weeks ago. And he looked very confused. He invites me into his office and he says, "Crilley, let me make sure I understand this correctly. You're not getting college credit right now." I said, "That's correct." He says, "And we're not paying you." I said, "That's correct." He says, "What are you doing here?" I said, and I just reached down into my belly and I said, "Don't throw me out. This is the air that I breathe. This is what gets me out of bed in the morning. I will die if I have to leave this place." And he took pity on me, man. He said, "Listen, I've seen something in you that I've never seen in another intern before. We don't have a job for you, but I'm going to create a job for you." And so he came up with this name, executive lackey, newsroom assistant, essentially. And he gave me my first break. And then to bookcase that, 1 year ago, he called our front desk. And he said, "This is Bruce Cornelius, and I'm an old friend of Jeff Crilley's. I need to talk to him." And so Lauren, our director of First Impressions, says, "There's a guy on the phone named Bruce Cornelius who wants to talk to you," and got on the phone. And he said, "Crilley, I'm celebrating my 90th birthday in the summer, and I would be honored if you would come." And so I got on a plane and flew to Lansing, Michigan, just to reconnect with the boss who gave me the break.
That's awesome.
And I gave him a hug and I thanked him for seeing that in me and rewarding that.
So you were in college, you had an internship, you went past the end of the internship, and would that end up being your first job, was working for that station?
First job, and then I was a part-time reporter, then a full-time reporter, and then a weekend anchor boy. I say that with a smile on my face because, man, I was 20 years old when I was an anchor. And I'm talking about mortgage rates. Well, I'm renting it like a dormer. So what do I know about mortgage rates? So I had a little chip on my shoulder that you're too young to be the person dispensing news in Lansing, Michigan. And I remember that same news director, I would change my voice. I would try to make it lower and more authoritative, like Dan Rather. And after a newscast, he grabbed me and he says, "Crilley, what are you doing? What are you doing with your voice?" I said, "What do you mean?" I said, he says, "That's not the way you talk, man." And I explained, I'm 20 years old and I don't think people are going to respect me unless I sound more authoritative.
Yeah.
And he says, "Crilley, you're 20 years old. It's going to take care of itself. Just be you." And that was one of the most important lessons in broadcasting I ever learned. Like, Matt, you're a perfect host because you haven't been overly coached. If somebody started saying, "Watch your ums and ahs," suddenly you're out of your head. You're thinking about, am I rambling? Am I saying too much? So you're perfect because the person that I see right now and the person I see on TV is one and the same.
Well, I appreciate that. And it sounds like Bruce saw that in you and just needed to coach you to be yourself.
He did. He did. So then the career path goes Lansing to Omaha, Omaha to Minneapolis for 4 freezing years.
That's
I
tough.
grew up in Detroit. Detroit's cold, but Minneapolis, you'd wake up and the weather
Yeah.
guy's saying we're expecting a high today of 16 degrees.
I don't know how they do it there. They have grit. Anyway, to live
They
there.
surely have. You talk about hard work ethic.
Yeah.
That's everybody in Minnesota has the same hard work ethic.
So from Minnesota, how do you make it to Dallas?
That's another story of grit. So when you limit your options to Dallas, and this dates this story because I got the job in '92, there were only 3 major stations: ABC, NBC, CBS. Fox hadn't come around yet. It was WB hadn't come around yet. So I had to convince one of 3 news directors in Dallas to bring me aboard.
Small audience.
Yeah. So what I did is I would take vacations each year. I'd fly down with the family, 2 little kids who both worked for me, by the way.
That's awesome.
Awesome, right? And we'd stay at a bed and breakfast, and then I would bluff my way into the interviews. I didn't have interviews set up. So I would call the news director's secretary every morning and I'd say, "Hey, Christy, it's Jeff Crilley from Minneapolis. How you doing?" "Just the same as I was yesterday." And I said, "Hey, listen, is there any way you can get me in to see Mike Seacrest from, Fox 4? I know he's got to go out for lunch at some point. What if I showed up in the lobby with some Dunkin' Donuts and a Starbucks, and if you let me know when he was going to lunch, I could just hand him my resume tape." So anyway, I did this for about a year and a half, Matt. It was, and talk about rejections. I mean,
Yeah.
you learn, you think you're feeling pretty good about yourself because you had won some awards in Minneapolis, but now you're getting doors closed on you. And I think I also needed to find more stick-to-itiveness and tenacity. And so every one of those rejections, I think, just made me hungrier. And ultimately, I got the job at Fox 4 and then spent 15 years at Channel 4.
That's awesome. What did it? Was it the box of donuts, or
Wi-
they finally realized you weren't going to wait till they gave you a job?
Well, it was my resume tape. So if you to put this into perspective for your audience, in order to get a job in TV news, it's all digital now. You just send them your YouTube link. But back then it was resume tapes.
Okay.
And they would put you in a pile. So my pile was white male reporter, 35 ish.
Yeah.
And there were piles. And so I said, okay, I got to figure out a way to stand out. And so this is back when home camcorders were just coming around. And so I got this crazy idea. I said, I'm going to use my family to build sympathy with these news directors. And because they're in the deep South, where it doesn't truly get cold very often, I remember one Halloween, it was 2 feet of snow on Halloween day. So we would be trick-or-treating with the kids in the snow. So I grabbed my wife, handed her the camcorder, and the beginning of my resume tape, I'm looking straight into the camera saying, "Mike, this is Jeff Crilley from Minneapolis. Today is Halloween day. This is my little daughter, Sarah. She's playing in the snow. My wife is running the camcorder. Please rescue me. This is no way for a person to live their life. Here's my latest work." And then I would go into
That's fantastic.
stories, and then I would end with, "Mike, I'm serious. I'm going to keep harassing you with these monthly tapes until you either get a restraining order against me or you hire me." And I said, "I know you value tenacity in reporters. I'm not going to give up on you the same way I wouldn't give up on a story if you assigned me to one."
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, flying to Dallas, creating different tapes, sticking with it, cold calling. That's just not something you see that much of these days.
No.
Why do you think that is? What do you think's changed?
Yeah, and this is a cliche, but I think the parenting style, and I'm guilty of it as well. Although both of my kids have grit, it's the trophy generation where you show up and you get a participation trophy. And so I'm a big believer that young people need to learn how to fail.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Right. And so, and I don't know how you raised your kids, but I ended up getting my daughter a car. It wasn't a brand new car, but I had my dad's hand-me-down Monte Carlo with the bad muffler.
Yeah.
I got her a car. It wasn't a very expensive car. It was like a $10,000, solid car. But then she told me later that it was the nicest car in school. And that was not in my intention.
You were able to get her a beater.
I should have gotten her a beater,
Yeah.
so if she got in a wreck, hey,
Yeah.
car's already a beater.
Yeah.
Anyway, how about you? How did you
Well,
teach your kids tenacity?
Well, my kids are 14 and 11, and the older one is dyslexic and already broke her back. And,
wow.
As a competitive dancer, had to go literally 6 months without dancing and struggling through sixth grade. So she's tough as nails.
Yeah.
My 11-year-old, she's a little too smart for her own good. And if she's listening, she needs to go through a few tough times before she gets to college. She's had it pretty easy so far.
Well, you're a great dad. I'm sure they've learned a lot from you.
Yeah. No, I try and encourage strong work ethic. Tell them, hey, we're going to help you to college, but that's about it. Like, you got to figure it out.
Good for you. Good for you.
And if you want a car, you need to help pay for it. Anything they buy, any electronics, like, you're paying for half of it.
Wow.
And they've done bake sales, they've done chores. Like, we really have tried to instill in them a sense of, what it means to have money. It's not just falling off trees.
Yeah.
If you break something, you're going to pay for it.
Good for you. That's great parenting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And any of those participation trophies I've tossed. Not all of them, but
Yes.
we definitely don't keep them around.
Yes. All right. So let me tell you about a time when we had to find even more grit.
Yeah.
So my daughter comes up with this crazy idea 7 years ago about podcasting. She says, Daddy, we need to start a podcast division. And I laughed at her. I said, Sarah, who listens to podcasts? And she says, my generation does, Dad. All those kids on the Katy Trail listening to stuff, it might not be music. Mm-hmm. And to put yourself in my shoes, I'm concentrating on public relations, Fox, CNN, local news. I'm Colonel Sanders and I'm doing chicken right. And she came up to me with Chinese food. Podcasting is a completely different industry than public relations. And I could have shut her down, but I believe God was smiling on me that day and said, don't crush her spirit. So I flipped her my little credit card and I said, don't go nuts. She spends about $2,000 on little GoPros, nothing fancy. First month, she had 5 clients in her division. Second month, 10 clients. Third month, 15 clients. And this thing started to take off. And that's when the light bulb went off over my head. I was like, what would happen if I started to spend some money on this stuff? And so we've created kind of like the Rolls Royce of podcasting, where it's just done for you podcasting. People are now flying in from New York and LA, knocking out a bunch of shows and leaving. And the business model is essentially everybody who ever started a podcast just wanted to be the host. Nobody wants to edit. So, we could advise you on the perfect home setup for your podcast. But if after the show, the person says, man, I shouldn't have said that about my ex-wife. Matt, can you cut that out?
Yeah.
Well, who cuts that out?
Yeah, you got to go do it.
You got to go do it yourself. And so we run into a lot of professionals who, I have a vague idea what they're billing during the day, but they're staying up until 11 at night editing a podcast because there were imperfections. And so now I have this amazing team. And, it's done for you podcasting.
Yeah, no, they've been great to work with. What's been the hardest part about getting this going?
Getting this going?
The podcasting.
So the building keeps moving us, and we love our building. If you're watching, we love our building. But because we're not a big fish in this building, if the neighbor wants to take over the whole floor, they come to us and say, okay, Crilley, you got to move again.
Oh, wow.
So we've been in the building for 10 years, and we've moved 5 times. And we're about to move a 6th time. The good news is that the building is generous with tenant improvement, TI.
Yeah.
And so each time we move, we create better studios, better atmosphere. And so we move again in December.
Moving takes grit.
Moving does take grit.
It's one of the most stressful things you can do in your life, I think.
Yes. Well, the nice thing is we won't be leaving this campus building.
That
and so we can slowly break down studios and start new studios next door.
Yeah. Well, it's been awesome, Jeff. And we've gone from your childhood in Detroit to becoming a successful newscaster by hanging out too long as an intern to making your move to Dallas to creating real news PR. Are there, some closing thoughts you'd like to share with our audience about grit and some of the things you've experienced in your 61 years hanging out here?
Absolutely. So my father, who's still my hero, he's 91 years old,
Wow.
retired in Waco. He said, Jeff, inside your head is a little screw. If you turn it half a revolution, everything changes. So half a revolution from fear is fight. And I run into way too many entrepreneurs, even in EO. I mean, you have conversations in YPO with people who are up against it. You know, they've run up their line of credit. So the idea of staying or wallowing in fear helps no one.
Fear is truly crippling.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about like Mark Cuban famously came to Dallas without a home. He was couch surfing on buddies' couches. And then he starts, you know, his technology companies that later sold to Yahoo for something like $4 or $5 billion. $6 billion. And so I'm sure there was times when he's sleeping on somebody's couch wondering if Mark Cuban has what it takes to be successful, and he's done okay.
Yeah, I'd say so. Well, Jeff, it's been an honor and a privilege having you on the show. Hopefully, for those laying in bed wondering what's going to happen to you, hopefully we can all be like Mark Cuban and have a $6 billion exit to Yahoo and then be the star Shark Tank and own the Dallas Mavericks.
Yes.
So we'll probably fall a little short of that, but I think one comforting thing to know is that if you stick with it, if you persevere on, good things do happen. Luck is where hard work and opportunity meet in the same spot. And yeah, turning that dial from fear to fight, I think, is an awesome message to close on. So
Thank you,
Jeff, thanks for being on the show today. It's great having you as a guest. Thanks for giving me the idea to start this podcast in the first place.
Well, and I love the grit mindset. Brilliant name.
Yeah, well, he gave me the idea of grit, and then I've got some really great designers at later that help come up with the logo and everything else.
Brilliant.
So to our audience, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. Stay gritty.